Hello, y'all. It's Chankwelle, or that chick with the her.
And I'm Shappy Pappy.
You know, Shappy Pappy, I don't think this world is educated enough.
You know, you're right.
So I'm going to be educating you on the properties of water.
Do you all know why water is important? Probably not, because y'all don't care.
Well, water is so important because of its many properties.
The first one is polarity. Now what that is here is an H2O molecule. The larger oxygen side is much more electronegative than the two smaller hydrogen sides. So in their covalent bonds, the electrons that are being shared tend to want to gravitate towards the oxygen atom. This causes the oxygen atom to be slightly more negative than the hydrogen atoms, and likewise for the hydrogen atoms to be slightly more positive than the oxygen atom.
Next property, Shappy Pappy, is hydrogen bonding,
which is directly related to polarity. Now what happens here is that the slightly more negative oxygen atoms tend to want to attract to the slightly more positive hydrogen atoms, which causes a small attraction in between the molecules of every water.
Excellent, Shappy Pappy. Now moving on to cohesion,
which will be demonstrated through sucking up this straw
that I will be sucking.
Now the reason why this works is because of hydrogen bonding. Normally what would happen is only the surface of the water would be sucked up through the straw, and the bottom would have to wait until the water was through the straw for more suction to come out.
Now I'm going to show you what happens when I suck up the flour in this container.
Now the reason why there was no flow of suction is because flour is does not have any cohesion. It doesn't stick to itself.
That was nasty. Anyway, next property
is adhesion. Now adhesion is when water sticks to other molecules besides itself. Now what's happening here is called capillary action. As you can see, the water is creeping up the napkin.
And that is adhesion.
Adhesion is also why, when you jump out of a pool, water sticks to you, making you wet.
Moving on. Next property is the reason why ice floats.
Ice is less dense in its solid form than it is in its liquid form, as you can see through this ice and this water. Now what's happening here is when water is in its liquid form, it's more in a mishmash of just flow. However, when it's in its ice form, it's much more structured, like a hexagon, which causes more space in between the atoms, and more space equates to less density, which is why ice floats in water, because it's less dense than liquid water.
And you know, if ice didn't float, we would all be dead, because the ice would gradually become more frozen and sink to the bottom and not be able to melt, because the sun would only be able to melt the first few top layers, a couple of inches, as you will.
And why this is bad is because any sea creatures that were in the liquid water would be crushed by the ice that would be falling on top of them. So no sea animals would be able to live if this property did not happen.
Next property?
Water is a good solvent.
You see this salt? I'm going to put this salt into this glass of water, and then you'll see it disappear. First, gotta mix it up, a little mix.
Do you see any water, Chankwelle?
I don't see any salt.
You get the point.
Exactly.
The reason why this happens is because water is a good solvent, and the sodium chloride is being dissolved into its sodium positive and chloride negative ions. How this happens is because the larger oxygen side is attracting towards the negative chlorine side, causing it to separate from its sodium side. And likewise, the slightly positive hydrogen side is surrounding the sodium ion, which causes them to literally be ripped apart from each other, causing them to dissolve just into their individual ion atoms.
Next property! Did you know that water has a high specific heat and a high vaporization?
This is demonstrated through this boiling water that took the length of this video to boil. Now the reason why, what specific heat is it takes a lot of effort for us to heat up this water. It took quite a while, unlike other substances.
A long time. You notice that the water and the steam, they're all boiling away and it's gonna be reversed back eventually.
The reason why it's steaming is because of vaporization. In fact, water has a high vaporization. This means that it takes a lot of energy, again, for it to change from liquid form to gas form.
Correct, Shappy Pappy.
Now back to specific heat. Specific heat is important because it allows coastal areas that are next to water to be warmer than areas that are further away from water. And likewise that if the water is cold, it causes those areas to be colder than areas that are further away from water. Because the water stores energy, so
That's it.
yeah, it just takes a lot of effort for temperature to change in water.
Next is surface tension. This is the last property we'll be going over with you guys.
In fact, it directly relates to cohesion. Now let's get a little
Shappy Pappy is going to be showing you
360 view of our
surface
set.
tension.
Failing a little. Okay, now even though we have failed with the water, as you can see, let's try this again. Do it again, Chankwelle.
Okay, Shappy Pappy.
Okay, as you can see, even though it's blurry, the water is sticking to itself and not falling off the quarter. That's because of cohesion, making it stick to itself into a sphere. This is also why whenever you see rain droplets, they are always falling down in a sphere.
Let's put the camera back, Shappy Pappy, so they can see my beautiful face. Let's review. We have cohesion, which was demonstrated by the straw,
Water sticking to itself,
and then we have adhesion,
demonstrated by the napkin, which is when water sticks to other stuff.
and you now notice that the napkin is now fully moist. And then we have ice floating, which is awesome because we're not all dead now.
Ice is less dense than liquid water.
Y'all welcome, water is very important. Then we showed you the salt, which was a good solvent, and
Water
the salt
is a good-
is now dissolved.
Water is a good solvent, causing the salt to be dissolved. And then specific heat shown by the pan, that took quite a lot of effort for it to become this hot. And likewise for the high heat of vaporization, which took, again, a lot of effort for it to change from liquid to gas form. And finally, we have surface tension, which is when the surface is more dense than the other side of the water. Which also means that when you belly flop into the water, it hurts a lot more than if you just dive, because a lot of surface is hitting you.
Have any questions? Nope.
Okay.
Well, goodbye. Make sure to comment and rate and subscribe. Goodbye.